So we are going to start this panel. I'm Paul, co-founder of Converse. Thank you very much for being here. I'm very honored to have this very, very qualitative panel. Thank you very much for being here. This panel is about social and identity in Web3. And before we start, before even presenting you guys, I just wanted to ask you a few questions to the audience. Who here has an ENS domain? Okay. Okay, I'm going to ask you again. Who has an ENS domain? Okay. Who has a Stark domain? Okay. Who has a Lens handle? And who already minted a ZK badge on Sysmo? Okay, nice. Okay, cool. Thank you very much. So I guess the audience is already a bit knowledgeable of what you do, guys. So Benjamin, I start with you. Can you present yourself and StarkNet ID?
So I'm Ben, co-founder of StarkNet ID. What we do is we empower users to create their on-chain identity on StarkNet, and they can write all the data concerning their on-chain identity on this on-chain passport on StarkNet.
Hadrien, Sysmo?
Yeah. Hey, hi everyone. I'm Adrian, founder of Sysmo. So we're an attestation protocol that utilizes ZK proofs. We enable users to selectively reveal things about their wallets. So for instance, if you have a wallet with many data, and one piece of data is that you voted on Aave governance, we create SBTs, soul-bound tokens, that proves that you are a voter in Aave without revealing your wallet address. So it's privacy preserving revealing of things about yourself.
Thank you. Makoto?
Yep. Hi, I'm Makoto from ENS. So most people know the ENS as a way to map your Ethereum address to the .eth name, but we can actually do more for hosting like IPFS content hash for the web, and also you can set your favorite PFP and make it as your kind of Web3 username and profile. So that's it.
Thank you. Stani?
So we build a Lens protocol, and Lens is a Web3 social protocol. So it means that you can create a profile, and to this profile you can attach different kinds of identities, including ENS, Sysmo, and you can create your kind of like relationships on a graph. So you can connect to other profiles and also share content. And the key interesting difference is that with Lens, you own your profile and your relationship with your audience.
Thank you very much. Before we even start about Web3 identity, Makoto, I have a question for you, which is, what's wrong with Web2 identities? Why do we need Web3 identities in the beginning?
Okay, yeah, so I think, I'm not sure if necessarily wrong, but it's just the fact that they didn't have the common infrastructure apart from the internet itself. So like all the data, they are not in the culture nor technology to share. So like all the data on like Instagram or Facebook or Twitter, it's all in their siloed and it's not accessible. Whereas Web3, everything in the like Ethereum or StarkNet, it's all in the public, transparent, and anyone can build cool shit. So I think that's a big difference.
And for the end user, like you're talking about the infrastructure, etc. But like as a user, if I'm using Web3, what can it bring me to have this Web3 identity?
Again, it's the transparency that actually it's not necessarily the blockchain data, but the fact that wallet addresses, it's kind of usable everywhere, gives a great trait that or if you look at my matoken.is, actually if you go to matoken.is.xyz, it turns into very nice profile information about all the shit NFTs I have, or I think if you go to a snapshot, you can probably see which governance I voted. And if you look at my impressive pop site, you can see that I went to DevCon 234. That's all in the blockchain, and as a user, you can just stitch together all the information. So I think my take on Web3 is you are what you did on chain. Yeah, then the user can see everything.
Okay, thank you. Benjamin, you chose StarkNet for your StarkNet ID service. Why did you choose StarkNet?
Yeah, so at the beginning we wanted to build games on StarkNet for the cheap computation, And when we were building our games, we were like, okay, we want to verify the Discord, we want to verify the Twitter, we want to access the ENS, we want to have an identity infrastructure in StarkNet. But it was 8 months ago, and there was nothing. So we started doing it on the side of the games that we were building it, and it took off, basically way more than our games. So we decided to let's be focused on the infrastructure identity side in StarkNet and bridge the other identity tools, ENS, POAP, etc., etc. So the goal of our StarkNet ID right now is to be really in the center of identity in StarkNet and to be the infrastructure that all the protocol will use for identity, especially in StarkNet.
And so, like, you are two, if I can say, identity providers for people. As a developer, there might be other identity providers in the end. Lens is, in a way, another one. As a developer, it might get complicated to, like, plug into like every single identity provider. How do you manage to standardize, if you try, standardize the identity level in order for developers to use it simply?
So basically, our infrastructure is in the center. You have an NFT, which is a StarkNet identity, which will represent your StarkNet passport in a way. And then on this StarkNet identity, you'll be able to write any data that you want. You can write, for example, your INS, you can write your social media, you can write your PFP, you can write your .stock domain, etc., etc. You can write whatever you want. And we wanted this contract to be really open and free to mint in order for people to build things on top of it that's right on top of it. So this is how it works right now. And what we wanted to do at the really beginning was you have this NFT which will represent your identity, and then protocols user or game builders will just have to look at this NFT, look at your identity, and he'll be able to retrieve all the data. So your ENS, social media, etc., etc. And we needed it at the beginning for the StarkNet ecosystem because we had we had a lot of difficulties to retrieve information for identity on StarkNet because we had to build everything ourselves. So yeah, that's the idea.
Thank you. Makoto, do you want to add something on this topic?
Sorry, for the interoperability or building block?
The identity and the ability for developers to have a standardized approach.
Sorry, yeah, we just had a conversation.
No worries.
Yeah. So in our case, so ENS is known for .eth, but little less known fact is the fact that you can actually import internet domain to other ENS names. So very famous example is Argent. Argent is one of the most popular wallet in the StarkNet, and they have like Argent.xyz, which is not ETH. XYZ is just internet domain, and you can import as a ENS. And by utilizing that, another thing we actually did with Lens is like Lens is in Polygon, and Stani has Stani.lens. Actually, we provide a infrastructure to be able to kind of become interoperable in the ENS Ethereum ecosystem. So you can actually look up Stani on MetaMask as a Stani.lens.xyz. So even though like I think it's great that it's like StarkNet ID providing the kind of best experience which fits in ecosystem, and like Lens to be the best. Lens to be the best on the Lens whole ecosystem. That's great. They have a specialty, but we are trying to be the hub of everything like Ethereum related ecosystem. And the great thing is to be able to kind of provide an alias to each kind of side of the ecosystem as a naming service, but not just using .is, but using .com or XYZ, which is the internet which already existed in not even Web 2. It's like Web 1 world. So we're trying to be the kind of hub to extend each name service in each ecosystem through the Ethereum. It's almost like Ethereum is a settlement layer for many like roll-ups, and we're trying to be kind of not settlement layer or kind of gateway, for all Web3 users to be able to access to each system. So does it also mean that you want to be here on each and every L2 that exists in order to be reachable in every blockchain? Yeah, so like we've been working with like StarkNet ID and also Argent, so like we can one of the problem, like again, I use Argent as an example that like storing data on Ethereum is very expensive. So like Argent wants to actually store the data on StarkNet. So we've been actually working with like StarkNet and us, Argent, and then a couple others, like how we can basically store the data on StarkNet, but making it accessible through ENS. So that's kind of things we are already collaborating together.
Okay, thank you. Hadrien, actually, it's funny because Makoto was talking about all of the public information that exists around there about him, and very impressive, actually. If you, maybe like a lot of people will also want to have privacy and some informations that are not shared to everyone in the public space. How can Web3 handle this? Like, how do you handle this as Sysmo, and maybe give a higher view on like this topic of privacy on Web3?
Yeah. I think that most of us, like big users of these decentralized applications, we often manage multiple wallets. So usually you have your public wallet, like it's often your ENS. For me, it's my ENS. It's on Twitter. It's on Lens. Not yet on StarkNet ID, but it will. And I have like all my signals. So that's my public wallet. I want to share this by default. Everything that I put here is by default public. Then I have a wallet on which I receive my salaries from work on DAOs. I have my private wallet, my OG wallet. And if you think about it, there are a lot of social data that is linked to that. And currently, the only one that we are able to leverage, the social data, is our public one. So like, it's easy. We know that we can share our .eth. We know that it's public. But then what about all the data that we did, like our weird experiments when we were early, like the private wallet we don't want to share at all? Like, how can we extract the social data that lies in there, like as an experimenter, as an early supporter of a protocol? And that's where Sysmo comes in. We allow you to prove piece of data from wallets and to aggregate them together to prove something. So let's say that you have ETH on 3 different wallets. With Sysmo, the goal is that you can prove your total amount of ETH without creating any link between your wallets. And you can bring this data and just this data that you need or you want to reveal to the app. So regarding this, I think that addresses, in my opinion, they should be more understood as technical things, like things that store data. And as a user, I think that in the future we'll hold many wallets, many addresses, maybe without even realizing it. But I think that these addresses are accounts, like technical accounts that store data. And I think that as a user, you will handle, without knowing it, many addresses, and then you'll pick from your sovereign data what you want to reveal to the app. So, yeah.
And does it also mean, like, because we've been talking about Web3 identity from the beginning, just in real life, we don't have one identity. Like, we behave socially differently if we talk to like different people, different groups, etc., etc. Does it mean that actually what you said was that we could also have like different wallets for our different identities, the way we want to appear to the world? How do you see it?
Yeah, I think this is step one. Step one is having multiple wallets, and you share like your DeFi wallet to DeFi apps. You share your public wallet to public apps. It's a bit like your Twitter, your Facebook, your LinkedIn. All of this is super siloed, and so you have like segregated identities, like block of identities. But in the real life, like you actually always, depending on the context, choose something very specific to the situation. So if I'm in a coworker party, I'll behave different than in my co-working space. I'll behave differently than with my friends. And so I think that the identity, you will, in the end, if we make a good job as an industry, will bring exactly what we need, like the context that we choose. So this is a dating app. I bring just things that I want to. So anytime I connect to an app, I bring the identity for this app. Like that's what I think on long-term future. That's what we are building for.
Okay, thank you very much. Stani, I have a question that is very similar to the one I asked Makoto in the beginning. Is there something wrong with Web2 social media, and why can Web3 fix at least part of it?
Yeah, I think there is, but I think from more of like a network point of view, I think. We really don't own the social presence that we have. So like today, if you think about it, pretty much 5 billion users are online, and there's almost equal amount of social media users. So like most of the relationships we create happens online, and that's the beauty of internet. Like Web 1, Web 2, that has been amazing innovation. It means that I can meet people, talk to people across globally, exchange informations, and form relationships. But with Web 2, what happened is that we've concentrated that into a few platforms because of the efficiency it provides, like the infrastructure, but also the experience. And we give up a lot of data, and we give up a lot of the social capital that we preserve, and we always have to the platforms. And what happens there is that the platforms itself, they can change in different directions, but the actual relationship and audience and your social capital that you created, you don't really have oversight over that. And with Web3 social, you can actually change that dynamic a bit. So you can have an ownership of your profile. And profile is just a base layer. It's a way to interact, connect with other profiles, and attach identities, and have that accessibility to your peers. And it's fundamentally gonna be a big difference. And the reason for that is, as an application developer, even in, let's say, financial application, non-financial, you will have to always think about what kind of features are good for your user and policies. And if they're not good enough, what the users actually have in Web3 is that they have the ability to choose, I would say, like venues or communities where they can reflect with those values or experiences. You can't really do that now on Web 2 social, because you basically are growing your audience within the same network. But with Web 3 social, you can actually grow the network together and then choose the communities and applications where are reflecting your values the most. And that really gives the power to the users to decide how the apps will be built in the future and what kind of experience there will be. And that itself is a radical difference. And you feel the power when at Lens you meet your profile and you go to one application and then you go to another one and you still have that portability and you still have your audience. And you can even have different categories of audiences. You might have a music audience, you might have your professional audience. So Web3 social does what Bitcoin did for example, for money. You have the ownership of that. So it's just kind of like an extension of that idea, in my opinion.
And you mentioned developers, actually, because you rely on, developers rely on you as a protocol, but you need developers in order to create innovative apps, innovative use cases. Do you have in mind, maybe to inspire people in the audience, developers who did interesting things, innovative things with the Lens protocol, which are kind of new to Web3, things that would be very difficult to do with other, Web2 based companies, and that are made possible by Lens?
Yeah, so there are a lot of things we've seen on Lens that are very novel because of the reason that maybe the way that Web2 social works, as a kind of a business model or a mental model, you don't see, for example. Just as a base layer feature, what we see is that creators and users, they're sharing content, and they can choose that content can be actually on-chain as well and tokenized as NFTs if they want so, and their audience can collect that content. So extending the idea of not just publishing art, but sharing ideas, thoughts, music, videos, anything, any user-generated content that might be valuable to your audience can become a collectible. And that's a way actually for the audiences to support the users. So you have interesting economies there. I also seen interesting application built. It's called Waves, where you can actually reward different users to amplify your content by sharing the content, which is kind of interesting because if you're a brand, you have an incentive to do that. But then, if you are a user and your audience can benefit from that information, you can actually share it and earn it as well. So it's kind of taking the model of, let's say, Web 2 social, where you are looking at ads and you might buy something, but the value loop is between the platform and the advertiser. And I don't know if the future of Web3 social or like Web3 anyways is going to be ads. I do think there's going to be some sort of idea where you could amplify interesting content to your audience, and it will happen because there's that ownership of audience that you might have as a user. But the fundamental difference here is that it's shifting towards the users. So the users are the ones that are benefiting. But there's that's just kind of economics that I wanted to show out that I've seen very valuable. And it's in terms of the protocol itself, because there's modules, so you can create different kinds of follow modules, collect modules as well. So when you collect an NFT or a content, it can go to, for example, to Gitcoin. Same for the follows. So you have this composability that provides that comes from using a blockchain and smart contracts, and you have that set of public data that you can use to verify. One exciting app I want to say is it's called Enzo, and they're actually building this. It's not really social that much, but it's basically building a digital wardrobe. So as a brand, you can create digital clothes, and your users can collect into this wardrobe, and it's powered by Lens protocol. And it's just we're going to see more and more novel use cases, because I don't think we're going to see the next Twitter coming out of Web3 social, but we will see new experiences and interest graphs being built.
Okay, thank you very much. I think we are running out of time, so thank you so much, everyone, for participating in this panel. Thank you very much for being here, and thank you.
Thank you.